It was a quiet Saturday morning in our sleepy suburban neighborhood, the kind of morning that made you want to stretch out on your porch swing with a glass of lemonade and just watch the world go by. I had just finished watering the front garden when I heard a knock at the door. Surprised, I glanced at the clock. It was just after 10 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I was greeted by the cheerful face of my neighbor, Hannah Mitchell. Hannah had lived across the street from me for almost 5 years. She was in her late 30s, a single mom with 2 energetic kids who often played soccer in their front yard. We'd exchanged friendly smiles and small talk whenever we bumped into each other while taking out the trash or collecting mail, but we'd never really spent much time together. "Hey, Rachel," she said, brushing a strand of blonde hair out of her face. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I just baked a fresh batch of banana bread and thought you might like a slice." I was touched by the gesture. "Of course, come in. That sounds amazing." I stepped aside and let her in, and she handed me a warm, foil-wrapped loaf that smelled like heaven. I invited her to sit in the kitchen while I made some coffee. As we sat at the table sipping our drinks, conversation flowed more easily than I expected. We laughed about neighborhood quirks, shared stories about our chaotic weeks, and swapped favorite recipes. I found myself enjoying her company more than I thought I would. After about an hour, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "It's so nice to just sit and talk to an adult for once," she said with a tired smile. "Sometimes I feel like my whole identity is just mom. You know what I mean?" He nodded. "Absolutely. Even though I don't have kids, I totally get what it's like to feel like you've been put in a box. Work, home, chores, repeat." She looked at me with a kind of relief. "Exactly. It gets lonely sometimes, even in a busy house." There was a pause. Something about the way she said it made me realize just how much she'd needed this break. I offered her another cup of coffee and asked if she had plans for the rest of the day. "Not really," she said. "The kids are with their dad this weekend, so I'm just trying to enjoy the quiet." "Then stay as long as you want," I said. "Honestly, it's been a long time since I've had such good company." That simple invitation turned into a full day of chatting, watching a feel-good movie, and even tackling a couple of small projects around the house together. By the time the sun was starting to set, we were laughing like old friends. Then, something unexpected happened. While we were sorting through some photo albums I had stored in the living room, Hannah came across a picture of me and my younger sister, Amy, from years ago. She froze when she saw it. "Wait, that's your sister?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight. He nodded. "Yeah, that's Amy. She moved to Seattle a few years ago." "Why?" Her face turned pale. "I think I knew her. I think she was the woman my ex-husband dated after we separated." I stared at her. "What?" "Yeah. I remember her name now. Amy Carter. Blonde, always wore a silver bracelet, loved hiking." "Is that her?" My heart dropped. That was absolutely my sister. That's definitely her. "But, wait, your ex-husband is Daniel Mitchell." Hannah nodded. "That's him." I sat back stunned. Amy had never mentioned dating a Daniel Mitchell, and she usually told me everything. Suddenly, a dozen little moments and conversations from years ago clicked into place. Amy had been tight-lipped about one particular relationship that ended badly, but I never pushed her for details. Now I regretted not asking. Hannah looked just as shaken. "I had no idea until just now. It's been years, and I guess it just never came up." The air felt heavy, but neither of us wanted to end the day on a strange note. So we just sat there in silence for a few moments before I said, "Well, at least we know the world is smaller than we thought." She laughed nervously. "That's one way to put it." Trying to lighten the mood, I changed the subject. We ended up watching another movie, and by the time she left, the mood was lighter again. But the strange coincidence lingered in my mind long after she went home. The next morning I called Amy. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Do you remember dating a guy named Daniel Mitchell?" There was a pause. "Why are you asking about him?" "Well," I explained everything that had happened the day before. There was another long silence on the line. "Rachel," Amy said quietly, I didn't tell you about him because it ended really badly. He was manipulative. It took me a long time to feel like myself again after we broke up. I felt my heart sink. Hannah didn't say much, but I got the sense things were rough between them too. Amy exhaled. I'm not surprised. If it's the same Daniel, I wouldn't be shocked if he made life difficult for her too. Later that week, I ran into Hannah while getting the mail. She looked unsure of what to say, but I smiled at her. I talked to Amy, I said gently. She had some tough times with Daniel too. Hannah looked down. That doesn't surprise me. We ended up walking together down the street, talking about how hard it is to move on from toxic relationships, and how healing sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. It was a serious, heartfelt conversation, and yet it brought us closer. What started as a friendly visit had turned into a shocking revelation, and somehow a new friendship formed through it. It made me realize how little we know about the people around us, even when we live right across the street. Hannah and I began seeing each other more often after that. Movie nights, coffee runs, even grocery shopping trips together. Months passed, and our bond grew. We became the kind of friends who texted each other good morning, celebrated little wins, and showed up during tough times. One rainy evening after a long walk, Hannah said something that stuck with me. You know, if I hadn't come over that day with banana bread, I'd probably still feel completely alone. Smiled. And if I hadn't opened the door, I'd still think you were just my neighbor. That's the thing about life. It rarely plays out the way you expect. Sometimes the biggest surprises come from the most ordinary moments, and sometimes a simple knock at the door changes everything. In the end, that unexpected visit from Hannah didn't just shock me. It reminded me how healing human connection can be. And in a world full of surprises, that was the one I didn't see coming.